Okay, so Randall, tell me, what is it that you were about to say it and I stopped you? Wh-
Well, we have something in common. We both have a music as a basis for what we do in a certain way.
That's right.
We seem to both really connect to music. I know you use a lot of lyrics in your writing as a way of
I do. I do. I just basically what I do is I incorporate. Well, for one, I partly channel. So what I do is I what I'm listening, what I'm perceiving inward, I try and work it into my writing. And most of the time, I perceive lyrics. So, to concise that, I channel music, if that makes any sense to anybody. So I channel music, and it usually works out that the lyrics are trying to convey something that I've already started saying at some given point in my writing. And so it just works out that way. So, it's like spirit is trying to say something through the words of a song. And so I use the lyrics as a continuation of what I'm saying.
and what they're saying to some degree. Hey, it's like you're in alignment with something that came to them in through spirit, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. But I'm interested in what you were going to say about music, since we have
Well,
this thing in common.
well, you asked me what do I do? So I said that's a tough question to answer because it evolves. It's been evolving since I've really started the project, and how it began was I was a an alternative rock musician when I was younger. We wrote one of the songs that we wrote was a song called "Oh World." My brother wrote the lyrics, and I wrote the music with a couple of other fellows. And and I'd always loved that song. He sort of meant it as an anthem to the world and to spirit and to individuality within the context of spirit, the paradox of individuality within spirit, and and I was trying to think of a unique way to present it to the world because I'm way too old to be playing music and I don't really play anymore, and it's just no one's gonna be interested in seeing me on stage anymore. But what I wanted to do was to make it what it really was, which was kind of I don't want to say an anthem because it's not an anthem, but what I thought of doing was to have all these different musicians from around the world in different languages and different styles do their own version of it in the same key, in the key of B. So there was kind of a similarity between all the versions. But all they had to do was follow the melody line. They could make up their own arrangement and express it in any way they wanted to. So I contacted the musicians all around the world and different from different genres as well, blues artists and jazz artists and rock and country and asked just sent them the original song in a very basic format and said just keep the melody line and do whatever you want, make it whatever arrangement you want, and basically it would represent your culture and your individuality, your own personal expression, and I thought that would be an interesting way of of having a context of one of a similar context being the song and all these different perspectives on how they hear it and how they would reinterpret it. So that's how the project began. Um,
That's very colorful.
yeah, yeah, and I also got people with different instruments too. I have lots of instrumental versions. I wanted people like a bagpipe player did a bagpipe version, just an instrumental version,
Mm-hmm.
and various instruments from around the world I wanted to be represented as well. Um, so it started with that, um, and and then it kind of blossomed into my other interest, which is talking to people and philosophy and spirituality and hearing the philosophical perspectives of people from around the world. So how I integrated them with that was I interview people, and at the end of my interviews, I always ask them to sing a line from the song. And because they don't really know what the heck I'm doing, it's a complete surprise to them that I would ask them this at the end of the interview. So you get to see a certain vulnerability in all these people that are experts in their field, like whether it's a Nobel Prize winning climatologist or you know um, Noam Chomsky. I mean, all sorts of people that you don't ever connect with music, right?
Yeah.
And so when I present them with this, asking them to sing a line, after you get to know them, right? I speak
Mm-hmm.
for 45 minutes or so. So I get to know people a bit, and we get to know each other like any conversation, right? So at the end of that, I asked them if they would sing a line from the song. So that's how I integrated the music portion to the rest of the project. Um, and and yeah, and for me, it's a way of showing a bit of vulnerability in people and having them sing the line. You get a certain sense of people when they sing that you don't get when they're talking about their field of expertise.
And like I said, I watched the one from your interview with Nassim.
Right.
Help me with his last name because it's so hard. Last difficult.
Aaron,
Okay, and he was like he had a really good voice. He was shy at first, but he came out with a really good voice, and I was surprised. Now I watched the one with Foster, and I don't remember hearing him sing it at the. And so, did you kind of exclude him from that?
I didn't put everybody singing at the end of their interviews.
Okay.
I'm saving some of that stuff for a different video that I'll put out separately from all that.
You could make like a
Sort of
collage or something of all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I have one from the beginning, from the first few interviews I did. I have a little video that goes through all that. But maybe I should have put them all in. I don't know. Some people actually got quite upset with me for asking. I know that one person, Anna Breitenbach. Did you see her interview?
No, I didn't see that one.
She's an animal communicator.
Oh, okay. I did see.
She's a communicator.
Pardon me. Say
Just
that.
a brilliant woman, a beautiful woman, and very, very, very open and spiritual woman. Anyways, I asked her to sing, and I put that up. I uploaded that with the video, and I remember getting some comments thinking how outrageous it was that I would ask such a wonderful person to sing such a dumb song or just to sing a song, right? So it's funny. It's funny how you get these different responses, and for me, the challenge of this project is not only putting it out and making it happen, but also getting this weird feedback and having to deal with that kind of stuff. I mean, you must have that too when you write an article and you get feedback.
I do. But you know what? I look at it as catalyst. I look at it as, okay, what's there here for me to learn from? What's there here for me to open to and to inwardly assess in terms of growing? How can I better feel my soul and feel the essence of someone else who is becoming vulnerable and I'm being, I'm serving as the witness of this. So I just use it as a tool for learning instead of, if you think about it, that's most of the spiritual practices. That's basically what you teach is how can you take something, or how the old axiom in English goes, take lemons and make lemonade, because essentially you're taking something and you're transmuting it into something else, something that you possibly have a resistance to. And you're opening up and saying, "Oh, wait a minute! I'm just not going to let this one, choke me," even though it has every potential for doing so. So I don't, I've learned enough not to let that catch me.
Yeah, well, that's my process too, and that's one of the purposes of the project personally, is to challenge myself, or as Carlos Castaneda terms, perhaps stalking myself. I put myself in uncomfortable situations. For me, even talking to people is very uncomfortable. Even though I love to talk to people, I'm always very nervous. My whole day before an interview, I'm sweating and I'm very nervous. Right, I've always been that way with people. Right, the people, freak me out to some degree. And of course, I'm dealing with brilliant people and people that are, experts in their whatever field they are. So I'm challenging my ego with that as well, which is, again, it's part of the project. The personal purpose of the project for me is to challenge myself and to challenge my ego and to, like you say, to sort of use it as a bit of a catalyst for my own growth as well.
I find that interesting that you say that you struggle with it, because you seem so natural and you seem so fluent and very easy with it. So I find it interesting that you should say that. Have you had an opportunity to dig in and look back and say why is it, find the why to what's causing the freeze up, so to speak?
Well, that must go way back in my default
It
system, way
always
back.
does. Yeah, it
Yeah,
always
exactly.
does.
So I'm working on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, my fluidity, whatever you think is a natural at ease, is my natural self. But inside, I'm not terribly comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working on it still. Like you say, there's almost like there's an observer,
Yeah.
right? Some part of me is freaking out, and some part of me just doesn't care anymore. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
try to
part
tip
of,
the scales to. Sorry, go
and
ahead.
that's part of the journey.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. And to be honest with you, I think that this interaction, these things that we have, that what you're doing and what I'm doing likewise is wonderful for that. Is a much easier process. Obviously there are many processes. I've worked on some myself to go and find the root cause of that. But this is probably a much more fun type process if you know to work it out in a more gentle way.
Yeah. Well, it's also just it's like turning a switch of perspective for me
Mm-hmm.
to remind myself or to remember that yes, this is all fun. That really, it's fun. It's something I want to do. It's nothing I have to do.
Correct.
And to go with it in the spirit of and also these are just people. I'm just talking to people because I like to talk to people, and I like people that have considered things. I like to talk to those people particularly. I like to talk to everybody because everybody's a magical being with a unique mythological tale to tell. So I enjoy talking to everybody that I speak with. But yeah, it's a challenge for me personally.
I want to share a really brief story, childhood story with you that might help you on this. When I was a little girl, my great grandmother, who was 94 years old, and I was something like 10 years old. I mean, she passed away at 94 when I was 10. But I would escort her, and I say escort her, meaning I would hold her hand, all the time, and going to the mall and just sit there, and we would sit by. I lived in Puerto Rico when I was a little girl, and from the time I was 5 months old to the time I was 18. And so we would go to this mall by the name of Plaza Las Americas, and there was this giant fountain in the middle of the mall, and her and I would just sit and eat ice cream or pizza or whatever, and just kind of people watch, just people watch, just going back and forth. And I always remember my little great granny had this sort of brilliance about her, just something about her exuded this love, to everybody that walked by. And she was never intimidated by anybody. And so one time I asked her, what was it what was her secret? And she very casually said, "Oh, honey, they put on their pants just like I do, one leg at a time." I will never forget that.
Yeah.
I will never forget that. That statement gave me such strength. Just to know that, you and I and anybody else, we're no different, regardless of whatever accolades we might have or whatever, accomplishments and whatnot somebody else might have. We're all the same.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yes and no. That's the funny thing. I don't know about your experience growing up, but my experience growing up was I thought people were pretty scary. My experience with people is that you run into people's walls a lot. I mean, school itself to me was one of those things where it prepares you for the rat race, right? It's so competitive. It's so dog eat dog, right? At least the schools that I went to growing up, um, it didn't seem to me that people were the same. Do you know what I mean by that? To me, people were a harder thing to
yeah.
deal with. I found, generally speaking.
I think you're
Like
talking more about bullies, though.
well, it's not even. It's more subtle than that. Um, what do I mean? I don't mean people that are even aggressive consciously. Quite oftentimes, I don't know how you felt growing up, but I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. I would say that for me, people, I would run into people's walls in many ways. Um, yeah, I don't even know how to explain it.
Well, for me, growing up was kind of odd, and I think I somewhat recognize the thread of what you're trying to convey. For me, I had and I can't say that it was an isolation, but it was an isolation more by self-inflicted isolation, because I felt that I was so different than most. And I guess that's might be what you're referring to, that people were strange, but it was more of an ideology type of thing. I did not like or felt drawn to people who were very superfluous, very, kind of fakey, for, lack of a better word, which is what kids these days would use, the word fake or fakey. And perhaps, obviously, that's judgment on my part, and it certainly is. As I look back and sit here and I'm looking at it, but that was kind of the sensation that was kind of setting me in my own little world, to say, I don't want to be that. And as I'm saying, that, obviously I'm pointing. So there was always a sense of, okay, I'm going to hold myself in this different space, because since I don't like that, then I'm going to create my own. And I, had very few friends. I think I could count in one hand still the friends that I had back then, and through the years have maintained. And in adulthood, I've made more only because of my line of work, and I've managed to find some that are like-minded. As we all have matured, obviously, that's a lot easier. But I think that childhood or young, that teens age is so difficult for everybody. I don't think you're excluded. I just think that that's a difficult time. It's you're finding your hormones are all over the place. You're trying to identify who you are. What are you doing in the world? What are these parents telling you, that they're saying you have to do this and you have to study? And so you've got this command coming from all over society and school and whatnot. So you're being bombarded with a tremendous amount of information, and you're having to assess what's all this about. So I think in general, that particular time of anyone's life is rather difficult. And at the same time, I kind of understand what you're saying. It's who am I? is the thing that comes to mind the most.
I suppose that's what it comes down to. Particularly, like for me, it started way before teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
You measure, I guess, if I go back and see how I understood the world around me, you measure yourself by your responses to things,
Mm-hmm.
because you're a child and you don't have anything to base it on.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this before, where you've had a sense of past lives, perhaps. Maybe as a child you didn't necessarily think that. But for myself, I've never had a sense of being here before. It really felt like everything was just trying to figure out how to survive here, right from day one. What was I going to get at? So, sure, go ahead.
Let me ask you, when you were in your teens, did you have a girlfriend? Did you fall in love with, you had a teen love? Really?
No, I was a loner right up until my 20s. Yeah.
That was interesting.
Late.
That was interesting for me, and I say interesting in that first love for me was really an awakening of self. It wasn't this sweet. I mean, obviously, it's this sweet puppy love. Any way you look at it, any way you cut it, it's a very sweet puppy love. But for me, it was a really incredible sense of, wow, there I am, and I have a spirit, and it wasn't a romantic. I guess that was for me the awe part about it, because it wasn't just recognizing a romantic love; it was recognizing the force of love. Period. Meaning right. The essence of the universe speaking and coming right at me, and And I think, no, I don't think, I mean, I know without beyond a shadow of a doubt that that particular incident with that particular individual was, was ordained through a contract, meaning I entered into a contract with this particular individual to wake me up at that particular time so that I
Right.
could recognize and know love down the road. So it was very interesting, and that's why I asked
Mhm.
you if you had any kind of experience of awakening at or something similar to that, or experience love as a young one.
No, I had infatuations, but my infatuations just sort of revealed my lack of connection because it was so far away. A female in my life as a teenager was so far away. It made me feel more removed from things. Um, and that's where music kind of came in for me. Music was one of those things that kind of connected me with a presence in the world uh, as a flow. In other words, I made music and I loved music. The music that I heard inspired me and it made me feel solid in some way. It resonated with me in many ways, and by making music, it also made me feel more a part of the flow outwardly as well. Um, so for me, music was kind of a bridge. It was a bridge between my own sort of introversion and sort of connecting with the outside world.
Well, music is, I mean, vibration, and like Nassim, right? Says,
Right.
I mean, the universe is vibration, is strings. So, in essence, the universe is music. So
Yeah.
that, I mean, music is anybody who identifies with music, you're back to identifying with that constant that speaks, and that constant that is within every one of us, and
Hmm.
saying, "Bing, bing, 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 there it is." And I don't
Yeah.
know how to identify it or interpret it in any other way, but I can identify it that way. Bing, 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 there it is. It's all,
Right.
what I mean. It has a ringtone inside of you, like you're this little bell, and you can kind of resonate in there. And so, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I have the same thing with poetry. When I was little, again, at that same period of time, 12 years old, when I had first felt in love, I was reading Khalil Gibran, who's my favorite poet, and not just poet. I mean, prophet, philosopher, and so forth. And I resonate with a lot of his writing, and I started writing. I mean, I had been doing writing poetry since long before that period of time, but that his style of writing was such a empowering thing to utilize in some of my style, and to carry through. It's
And what
that
age were you when you discovered him?
when I discovered Khalil Gibran, I was 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh
I
wow.
was I was reading him at 12. He was one of my favorite books. The Prophet was the one I'm referring to, that's kind of more poetic, and each it's not like a story. It's just like a chapter on love and a chapter on sorrow, and
Hmm.
so so yeah, I resonate with that kind of melodic, romantic use of language, of word, that you are able to express your inner sense of being, and your attunement to
Hmm.
to all there is. So it's kind of I mean, it's music in a way, because
For sure.
it,
Yeah.
it has its own flow. But
Yeah.
but anyway,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that we're both doing kind of essentially, I mean, I won't say the same thing, but we're doing similar work in terms of reaching out to folks who have an interest for expanding and propagating the concepts of consciousness. What is what are some of the people that you've interviewed that stand out for you the most?
Hmm. Well, everybody's been awesome. Everybody is great. I felt connect. I felt like a certain connection with every single person I've spoken with, because when you're talking, and you start delving into people's being
Mm-hmm.
through words, you get to know people to a certain degree. At least I feel that way. I feel like there's a certain connection that happens. Philosophically, the people that I align with the most have been like Jose Luis Parise
Mm-hmm.
and Tom Campbell. Those two are philosophically I align very much with. Because for me, one of the bigger influences that directed me, I was not very conscious of. I was conscious of how I felt in the world, but I couldn't put it all together until I read Carlos Castaneda when I was about 15 years old. I was kind of delving into the Bible and stuff because I needed something. Something this world was too dissonant for me.
Mm-hmm.
So at about 12, 13, I started looking into the Bible because I wasn't even aware that there was anything else. And then my older brother gave me a Carlos Castaneda book, and that changed everything after that. It made me re-examine how I experienced the world. So I guess the reason why, and I've sort of evolved from that core understanding, and I guess that's why I relate more to Jose Luis Parise and Tom Campbell, because they have the same sort of structure of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So in philosophical terms, those are the two guys that I really connect with. But everybody has got a little piece of the puzzle, it seems to me. Whether it's Nassim Haramein or Bruce Lipton, they all have a little piece of the puzzle that I find fascinating. It's just, I don't go into the details of biology, but biology's got the answer for everything too in its own way, right?
Mm.
And everything's got its, it's like you can find the answers to the universe in a leaf, right? Or in anything, because everything is everything. But I connect more to, I guess, those philosophies. But everybody's been interesting, and it's expanded my understanding of the world by talking to every single one of those people, and not just what they're telling me, but by the connection, by relating to somebody else and having to relate verbally, because everybody's got their own way of talking, everybody's got their own way of hearing the question that you've asked and responding back, which it takes a subtle sort of pliability to kind of relate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that, and I enjoy the challenge of it, and I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy the feeling that it does for me. It expands me by doing that. So everybody's been marvelous. It's been a great experience speaking with every person that I've spoken with, whether they're a well-known scientist, religious person, or anybody that I've ever spoken with. Everybody is a chance for us to connect in some way, and I've always looked at it that way. And depending on how much that person can open up to me, I can open up to them.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's always dependent on the other person. And that's why, like I was saying, when I was younger, I found that most people, they would cut off the connection before I would, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand now what you're saying, but that goes back to relate. That's if you've read a little bit, and I'm sure you're familiar with the philosophy of Carl Jung. Carl Jung talks
Somewhat,
about the shadow.
Right.
And one thing I've learned, that someone who is not connected with themselves, someone who has not been able to have some identification with their shadow, who is not very mindful, in open to consciousness, has a more, and I'm going to use this word very loosely because it's the only one that's coming to mind, to the tip of my tongue, but it has a more vile expression of their shadow. So that's where you bounce a little bit more with other people. Whereas someone who is more in tune with who they are, they resonate, more subtly with other people. So in other words, you've learned to be in the wave, to be in the now, and to be to feedback the personality and whatnot of someone else, and to be present. Really, present is a more accurate word. So perhaps that's what you're relating to, and that's not a easy practice. To this day, I know a lot of people who are like that, but I think that has to do with just not being present with who they are, not being present in the now, not practicing mindfulness and so forth. And that's just all part of the paradigm of the old paradigm of where actually what you and I, people like ourselves, are trying to help everyone recognize that, look, we can't continue that trend. We need to be able to be more aware of other people's emotions and other people's be more compassionate and more loving. So I think that's all comes from being present, being to relate it in Jose Luis's terms is to have left brain and right brain be more coherent, and being more I can't think of any other word to say, but that in the now.
Right.
And
right. For myself as a child, it was just an emotion. Right. Yeah. For myself as a child, it was an emotional response that you're open and you're getting closed back.
Right.
So and that creates turmoil. That created conflict in my life, and also created conflict within myself.
Right.
As I've gone on for the last 30 years and 40 years, learning and living and reading and listening and experiencing, I understand all this now, right? I understand what's happening now, very well. It's just that it's still integrating for myself, right? I mean, my ego gets challenged all the time, and that's awesome. I love it. That's why I'm doing this project too, is to challenge my fears, my insecurities. But fine-tuned, always fine-tuning, and always finding interesting ways, fun ways to do that for myself, and to share it as well. Like you were saying, for myself, it's important now for me to be outward as opposed to inward. I would like to share things with anybody who's interested, not as a sense of self presenting my self-image to the world, but connecting. Right? To me, connecting is the best part of this place. Is connecting with people, with animals, with life, with sun, with everything that feels good. So for myself, that's what this project is for me. It's me externalizing my internal world.
Well, and you're co-creating. You're co-creating when you do that. When you're connecting, anytime that you're connecting with anything out there, you're co-creating with that is out there. That's why I titled my book "Connecting to Love," because you're connecting to love. I mean, I was using the word love as a metaphoric way of saying God or everything that is or everything that's out there, because to me that's all that it comes down to. I have this fascination with the word love, but only because I identify love as the source of being. So, but it's connecting to that other. I don't. We've shared a little bit about the philosophy of Ra, or the law of one. I told you about. I'm very much involved. And in the philosophy of the law of one, it's not, they refer to it as other self. In other words, you're not someone else. You are an other self. You're another one of me. So I like how they've, that's very poignant, because when you get to see it that, no, you're not out there separate from me. You're another me. Then it seems like it changes the whole tune, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I come from a bit of a different philosophy on that. In that, to me, that's the paradox. Is that we are all a unique being that is part of a whole, and I think that paradox is finally what I'm beginning to understand, not with my intellect but with my being, and that's what that understanding is what gives me the courage, for lack of a better word, or the conviction to just to start doing now. To me, it seems like this is the time where there's nothing to hold back anymore. I mean, it's like the concept of using death as an advisor, which is a Carlos Castaneda Don Juan thing. In the face of death, which is what awaits us all, any sense of personal protection is useless. It only serves to shield you from from expansion. So for myself, I would say that I do feel that we're all connected, but we're all unique at the same time. Is that part of the raw philosophy as well?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because back to Nassim's interview that you did, when he was explaining that I don't, obviously I can't recreate his very scientific way of speaking, but how we are all providing experience to that one entity or that one thing. In the law of one philosophy, it's referred to as the one infinite creator. But yes, I mean, we are all unique, and therefore uniquely offering our own gifts to the infinite creator to learn about itself, because that's really all it is.
Right.
We are fractals of the one infinite creator, and
Right.
through our own experience and through our own personalities, it's learning. So
Right. It is becoming aware of itself.
it is becoming aware of itself. Exactly. So
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting how scientifically he's saying the same thing that the law of one is saying.
Right.
There was something else that I was going to say to that. To that, I kind of lost track.
Well, what's interesting is that there's people in the world of biology, whether it's Bruce Lipton, that says the same thing from the point of view of biology. Like we were saying earlier, there's all these people, Michael Tellinger's, there's all these people that are coming to that conclusion from their own perspectives, the scientist perspective, the whatever perspective. There's all these different archetypes of perspective. You get attracted to poetry and music. Some people don't. Some people are attracted to different way of looking at things, whether it's science or whatever. And it's all interesting. It's all interesting that all these people, and that's who I try to find for interviews for Our World, is these different people that are coming to the same understanding from all these unique perspectives. And I think that diversity is exactly what we've been talking about. It's that uniqueness that is part of a grand, sophisticated, unimaginable whole that we all belong to. And and to explore it is in my own minimal way is the best part of my life. It's fun. It's fun. It's exciting, and yeah, I love it.
It has, for me, it has given a whole lot of meaning, and has propelled a lot more force. And I say force not in the sense of force meaning you have to force this, but meaning in fueling my desire and my personal life mission. Coming in contact with like-minded people is so refreshing. It kind of says, yeah, this is why I'm getting up in the morning today, even though I could just roll up the covers and say, no, I don't want to do this today. But
Right.
you talked about death. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, it sounds like
what? We have a lag, so every once in a while I'll talk and we'll overrun each other, and so you were saying
you were talking about Castaneda and death. What's your sense of death? Are you afraid of death?
My sense of death is that and no, I'm not afraid of death, but for me it's the ultimate challenge to overcome. To me, what Dongwon is unique amongst all the things that I've understood is that their challenge is to maintain their awareness past death. That's their goal, is to continue their journey of consciousness and evolution. And for me, that's if Jose Luis says there's an impossible goal, the possible goal is what we need to use to clear out our mental body. That would be my impossible goal, would be to maintain my awareness past death, which I believe can only be done consciously. It won't. I don't believe that myself. I don't believe that we all maintain our awareness unless we do it consciously. That's my own personal belief. I have no proof of anything either way, but that's just what under my logic would tell me. What's your feeling about that?
I have no fear of death, and I understand. This is one of the reasons why I really encourage people to read The Law of One, because they do explain death in many different, or not different ways, but in a rather cohesive way that one can wrap your brain around. But it's just a transition. It's just a transition from matter to back to spirit, and and consciousness remains the same. So from that respect, there is a complete review of life, whatever it is that you had set out as your schedule or as your curriculum prior to coming here. So prior to coming here, we have set up, X amount of items to accomplish as part of the learning curriculum. And what you do is to review that particular life period and see how you did, and whether you passed the test, so to speak, of that which you had set out for yourself. There is no judging involved. The only judge is you. And that was pretty enlightening in knowing that, I'm not being judged. I'm not coming to the pearly gates and saying, "Oh, sorry, you got to turn around because you're not allowed here. You don't have a ticket to get in." So that was pretty nice to know. But
did you have a?
Go ahead.
Sorry, we're having a big lag here.
Did I have a what?
Did you have a religious upbringing, a Christian upbringing?
Yeah, I had a Catholic upbringing, which I no longer practice. Not because I don't believe in Christ. I do believe in Christ, and I do believe definitely in God. But my understanding of it is completely different now. I see organized religion as means to control humanity, as means to control what to believe in, what not to believe in, how to go about this and how to go about that are so regimented that basically work you into a very finite box. And in that box, there's very little possibilities. There's very little opportunities for expansion of consciousness. So no, I don't I don't ascribe to any one religious philosophy. And, how about you? Were you?
No, I wasn't raised in any religion.
Lucky you. Lucky. I said lucky you.
Oh yeah.
Because those are patterns that you now. I mean, it's you have to go back and unlearn all those things.
Well, you know what? It doesn't matter, because I found out when I was in my 20s that we're all Christians no matter what.
Sure.
Because all religion is the outward expression of ego, right? The same structure that contracts us and judges us is what we projected into religion, right? So it's useful. It's got its purpose, but I recognize what it is and what its purpose is. I'm not. It doesn't. It's not part of my of understanding. I understand its structure, but it's not part of my structure of understanding. So yeah, it was nice to have come from I guess I didn't have to struggle with that dilemma. I never had a fear of God or a fear of hell or any of that kind of stuff, which is probably a nice place to start from, rather than, although sometimes it's like what I ask all my flow of conversations always have a similar flow, my conversations with people, and conflict is always at the core of it for me, because I think people don't understand conflict. It's funny because almost every person I ask, except for the people that I find are very sophisticated in their understanding, they try to. Most people will say that conflict is not necessary for our evolution, for our consciousness, and yet later on they'll say that they'll contradict that by saying that that this is an opportunity for us to finally become aware of where we are, which is ultimately the purpose of conflict. It is the manifestation of our, what's the right word, disconnection, whatever it is. It sparks awareness. Conflict sparks awareness. And the two people that I thought that really understood that was Jose Luis Parise and Tom Campbell. It's actually part of their understanding that it's the spark, as Jose Luis says, right? That it's the friction that creates the spark. So I think that if people understood that conflict is actually a necessary part, we could overcome it easier. Like, instead of judging religion as being what it is, I think we just need to realize that, okay, what it did was useful, without judgment. I mean, you use the non-judgment thing to its core, right? Even to the things that are so obvious in the harm that they've done, the harm. But it's been the reflection of our attentions. We are responsible for that, and we have it internally, whether it's externalized or not. So to me, conflict is a very important part of our learning. I mean, for me, conflict was what shaped everything I am. I don't know. I don't even know if it's possible to get through this world without conflict. Is it? Is there anybody out there that just felt joy and love their whole life?
I'd like to find them.
It'd be amazing if there was such a person.
But I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I call that shock and awe. And I use that word from, if you recall the, what was it, the Gulf War?
Yes.
Where they use the term shock and awe. In my book, I call that conflict shock and awe. But I agree that friction is, and I compare it to a pressure cooker. Do you know when you put food in a pressure cooker, or even popcorn? If you take popcorn, which is in one form, when you're putting popcorn in the skillet, to make it looks, this little yellow grain, and you put a little bit of oil and salt and whatnot. But when you open it up, it's this little puff of white. It has transformed. So there's transmutation, but it happens under heat. It happens, there's a transition. Pressure, exactly. So transformation comes about through pressure, through an exchange of friction in a way. There's a thermodynamic experience there happening. So I agree that in order to see, one side or arrive to another side, there's got to be something to provoke it.
Right. And that's how I understand death. You're asking me what I feel death. To me, death is that ultimate pressure. Mm-hmm. It's the ultimate pressure on all of us. And once we recognize that ultimate pressure, that we are here for a limited time, there's no bigger pressure. And so to transform through that, you have to recognize that, from my point of view. And that's why, like I say, my impossible goal would be to maintain this awareness and evolve it to the point where the death of my physical body would just be, like you say, a transformation consciously from one understanding to another, or one dimension, perspective to another.
Yeah.
But anyways, pressure, and
the I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Tom Kenyon. He is the channel for the Hathors, the Hathor material, and the Hathors speak really. They do some very clever and very, very specific and delineated exercises, which can be found in the Hathor material book. But one of the things that is vital, according to their teachings, is to be able to keep energy in the ka. The ka meaning the pranic channel, the pranic tube that runs parallel to the spine. So you have your spine, and you have your ka running parallel. So the ka is to be filled with light, as often as possible. And there's meditative exercises that utilize the torus, the torus. Mm-hmm. You're visualizing light spiraling from above into, your head, down all your chakras, grounding down to earth, to Gaia, and coming back up and doing the same thing. And what that's doing is filling up the ka. And if the ka has enough energy and you're able to sustain that through the period of time when you pass over, then you have, you can transcend to the next dimension a lot easier. And that's not just in consciousness. That's just in, I mean, it'd be hard for me to articulate it in the way that they explain it, but I highly recommend that you might, if that is one of your concerns and wanting to, that's one of your goals, so to speak, then I highly recommend that you read that material because it might be very enlightening for you.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's all these. That's another thing about the project is I'm hearing all these different cultures or ancient cultures that have their own way of or their own system of realizing that end result, whether it's Toltec or this person that you're talking about. There's so many. The Indian culture seems to have a science, down to a science as well. So it's been very interesting for me to hear about all these different systems that have been created.
Yeah. Now the Hathors, let me back up because the same as the raw material, the Ra and the Hathors are both extraterrestrials from other planetary, systems which have come around to help humanity.
Right.
And they have been channeled, various people have channeled them and brought this information forward. So I take it with, and not every channel material is created alike. You really need to be discerning about what it is. Speaking of interesting people who I've interviewed and who you've interviewed, one of the most interesting people that I interviewed was Carla Ruckert, who really recently passed away in April 1st, April Fool's Day, which also was somewhat memorable. But she was the channel for the raw material. And one thing that I learned from her, she said, the best way to judge channel material is by how you feel, how it makes you feel. If you feel at peace, if you feel that it's opened up a higher core of loving energy, if you feel that you're really held in spirit and in unity, if you feel all these wonderful things, then trust it. If it makes you feel scared, if it makes you feel like, because there's a lot of channel material that's more apocalyptic, It's like, you need to be prepared for this. You need to, make a hole underground and go crawl under there for when this and that happens. That's just scaring the bejeebies out of anyone. So if it has that sense of that kind of tonality, put it aside. That's coming. Just because it's an entity from another dimension doesn't mean that it's an elevated. It's a other dimensions do not necessarily mean higher wisdom or more advanced consciousness, and that's the one thing to have in mind.
Right.
So. Back to the raw material and the Hathor material, they are beings of what's called sixth density, which is millions of years more advanced than our civilization, and they, for a number of our evolutionary or cycles, because Earth cycles every 26,000 years. There's a more specific number. I'm just rounding it up to 26,000 years. So there's been so far 3 major or minor cycles to this major 75,000 year cycle. But they have come a number of times to aid the various civilizations here on Earth and impart their teachings. And that's where a lot of the Hopi teachings and the Maya teachings and whatnot come from, because they have been aided by so many of these extraterrestrial civilizations that came in. So I've, and to me, that's where my interest revolves in trying to find who else is out there, the Pleiadians, and, who else is out there and who's got an influence over us, or who has been putting their 2 cents to create what we've got going here in on Earth. And it's very evident that there are polarizing interest affecting us, currently. There's, the positive polarity and the negative polarity are both playing their own roles in what's going on. But it goes back to friction, So even though we don't like it, I don't like the state of being, the economic, or the political. But at the same time, maybe it's what's necessary for us to wake up.
And perhaps what's necessary to look inward, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you're mentioning all these influences on us, inorganic beings or whatever, extraterrestrials, and we're obviously there's all sorts of there's probably infinite sources of beings in this universe that we have no idea of, that we don't even experience in our organic awareness, that even probably influence us. And I guess the trick is, for me, where I've come to now is I don't look so much for answers without. I'm at the point now where I find them within myself. I love to hear what people have to say, and I love talking to them, and it's a challenge for me in certain ways, and it expands me in many ways. But I find now that I'm at the point now where it's like you were saying, I trust a certain core understanding, and it's as long as it is humble and I live in humility, my response is pure enough that it tells me, it leads me. So I don't find that I have so much of an interest in the influences on me anymore, because there's so many of them, that I look more for that pure flame that'll guide me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
And that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. One of and I understand where you're coming from. I've been at that stage before. Even, to tell you the truth, for many, many years, I did not start reading until I was 48 years old. When I say reading, I mean actively seeking, material. I did a lot or some reading as a child, not very much. But I had this sense of reading as a punishment, because I associated. My mother, when I was a little girl, sat me in a rocking chair in timeout and said, here's a book. So there's this mental association of reading with punishment. So I had this phobia about reading. But one of the reasons why I've become actively involved in reading and looking for these things is because after being in that stage that you're talking about, where I look inward, now one of the really fun things to do, and I say fun with a great sense of joy and bubbliness inside. I mean, it really is fun, because once you get to have an understanding of something, it's almost as if you've identified something within yourself and within your core that is so innate, that it's so pure, that it's so intuitive, and now you want to almost like put it to the test, right? And so what has happened for me is I've put it to the test up against the information that's out. So in other words, it's like a corroboration. Okay, now I'm going to see if I was correct. And I feel something, and I find something, and I believe something, or I come to some understanding, and suddenly it's like I'll see a book, and there it is, it somehow manifests through the ether, or somehow lands in my lap, and boom, and I'm reading, and it's like, oh, voila, yeah, I know what this is all about. It's as if there's I can't. It's a confirmation of what I already knew. So to me, it's really refreshing to have that kind of come to a unity or come to a fruition, and have that understanding.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
reading these materials have been refreshing in that sense.
Well, yeah.
And I've
Yeah, I think it's vital. I
yeah.
agree with you. It's just I just did it backwards from you. I started reading when I was about 12. I started with the Bible. I got into Cross Castaneda. I read all the Greek philosophers. I read all the philosophers. I read so many books from about 12 to 30 that I read myself out. I've sort of I don't even like to read anymore. That's why I talk, because I prefer now to talk to people than reading their books. As a matter of fact, I just contacted somebody and to interview him. Um, what's his name? Paul Levy, and he wrote a book about. Anyways, I haven't read the book, but I contacted him and I said I haven't read your book, but I'd like to interview you. And he suggested that I read the book first. But for me, I'd rather know what he says by talking to him than reading the book, just because to me it's the same thing whether you read a book or hear it in a video. It's still getting information, But for me, for myself, I just went the other way. I read so much as a young person that I'm just not compelled to read anymore. So I understand what you're saying, because reading is an awesome thing, and if you did it later in life, just as opposed to my beginning, it's the same thing. It's the same useful exercise.
Well, something really interesting happened to me when I was young. I did this course, and it has changed names now. It's known now as the Silva Method. This man by the name of Jose Silva, who's very well known in today's world. I mean, he's no longer around, but he developed these techniques of learning how to, I guess, delve into subconscious mind. Like you and I right now are in the beta state, and going into alpha and theta and then delta, which is your sleep state. In other words, how to navigate brainwave, and I guess you could say go into meditation, although that was not the lingo or the language that he gave it. He gave it navigating into level. That's what he called it, level. This level, that level, so forth. But one of the wonderful things that happen is that because I learned how to navigate those various brainwave functions, I was able to attune into what's now known as the Akashic field. It's the field of information. Mm-hmm. So I think part of what happened for me is information was easy. I could attain information without reading. I could, if I wanted to know something, I just, go into level and I learn it. It's not like you're learning it from a book. It's not the same thing. So you're learning it on almost on a cellular level. You're learning it viscerally. You're learning it intuitively. It's a whole different way of learning something. So for instance, when I wrote my book, that was one of the things that I wanted to do. I'm very, very proud, and I say this not with a pompous kind of proud, but proud in meaning that I'm very pleased and thankful that I did not have the influence of all these different books. I'm very thankful that I did not read throughout all that time, so that I actually wrote my book from what I knew, from my own inward learning. And what's interesting in retrospect to look at is how my book yet brings into fruition all these different philosophies, which I now read about in all these different philosophy books, whether it's raw material or whatever it is, and to know that I was able to consolidate all the teachings, like even pretty much what Jose Luis talks about, which is the 11 steps of magic, which is really, I mean, he he puts it in the context of magic, but the way I see it, to make a fairly and I won't say seamless because it's not seamless, but the closest comparison that you could come to in English would be the hero's journey, what's known as the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. But in my book, I talk about the same thing, only I do it through a little bit different way. I use personal experience, and I use lyrics and whatnot to convey the message. But it's essentially the same way, and I've been able to capture it in less than 200 pages, well less than 200 pages. So I feel I wrote the book for the 20-somethings, so I was trying to do it in a very simplistic way, and how can I convey this in the most basic of ways I could possibly do it, and that's how I was able to do it. So I feel really a sense of accomplishment that that I was able to utilize, my own inner knowledge, experience, and translate it into word, and then go and say, oh yeah, that's the same thing,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, you remind me of my brother was a big mentor of mine. He's 4 years older, and he's gone through his own journey, and he was what introduced me to a lot of the things where it's Carlos Castaneda, or a lot of the things I understand now. And one thing he asked me as a little riddle when he was about 19, I think I was 16, and he asked me, why do great minds think alike? And the answer was because there's only one truth. So if you access that, you're going to sound like everybody else. You're going to have the same. You're going to have your unique, but you can claim that knowledge for your own because you found it. But you have your own unique hue on it. But it's going to be the same answer that Jose Luis has, that everybody else has to a certain degree, and that's what's magical. And that's what really, like you say, that's what connecting is, and that's when you find that you've met your tribe, that you've met your people. Is when they see that too, and they didn't see it by reading it in a book. They found it out from their own experience and their own journey. Yeah, that's awesome. That's when
it has more value to you, when you say, okay, this resonates and it's mine, and I found it on my own.
That's knowledge versus information, right?
Yeah.
This is a world of information, but very little knowledge, right? So knowledge is. People confuse those things all the time, in my opinion.
Well,
but knowledge is something that you experienced.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
What you're talking about is gnosis. 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 Gnosis and knowledge are a little different.
What's the difference?
Well, it's you've described it well. I mean, it's the difference between information and knowledge. But knowledge could be attained from knowledge of books and higher knowledge, but gnosis is more utilizing the avenues of intuitive learning.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So
I guess that's what the Gnostics were. The Gnostics are based that term is based on that kind of knowing. Awesome.
Correct. Gnosis.
I did not know that. That's neat.
It's if you also Google crystallize, I think crystallized intelligence or crystallized knowledge. So I'm trying to think of what the combination of words, but it's crystallized something. It has to do with crystallization. It's basically where the pineal gland has a certain level of crystallization. Because if you think about it, the way I understand it, the pineal gland is it's almost like a crystal. It looks like a little pine cone, but it has a resonance. It vibrates to information, and I think there's something. The glia, I believe it's what it's called. It's like a wet, it's liquid, and so there's some sort of resonance on how it receives information. So we all have intuitive and psychic abilities. Unfortunately, we just don't put them into practice. And from that respect, I'm very, very thankful that I was introduced to this work of Jose Silva because I was able to learn a few tricks, under my belt that I carried through life, and they came
And
in
you put it into practice.
and I put them into practice, and they came in very handy.
Cool. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Where would we be without help? I've found that too. Like I was saying, as a young kid, I just experienced the emotional experience of it until I started hearing things from people that gave it a certain angle that resonated with me. That set me off on a whole new journey.
yeah, where would we be? And that's part of it. A lot of people forget that people, so people forget that other people are there for a reason. That when you encounter this, let me just bring it to a song. There's a song in the play Bewitched, Wicked. I'm sorry, Wicked. I don't know if you've heard
No.
it's a Broadway play called Wicked, but there's a really neat song in there, and it was interesting because the way that my book fell into place was I basically set myself to a game of hide and seek with the universe. I told the universe, I'm writing this book, help me. And so that's exactly how it worked out. It was really, really fun. Every day I would wake up and say, what is it that the universe is going to tell me to write about? And on the day that I was writing chapter, I can't remember what it was, I think it was chapter 10. It was the day that Oprah Winfrey was doing her closing ceremony for after having served 25 years on television. And she was, they were wrapping it up and they were doing this big celebration and show. And so this woman by the name of Cheryl, something I can't remember her last name, came out on stage and sang this song. And I was watching, and it just happened that I was just sitting on the couch writing at that time. And she starts singing the song from Wicked. And Wicked talks about, the song is, I've heard it say that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we listen and we help them in return. And so the song continues, but to me that's the key.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who comes into your life. It doesn't matter how they display whatever it is that they display. It could be nice, it could be not so nice. But they're displaying something that you're supposed to get. And if you don't get it, that one thing is going to come back over and over and over, manifested through somebody else or something else until you get it. And so anyways, that's how I included that song. And again, that's how I'm saying that I channeled, but it was my sense of alertness to saying, okay, what is it that I need here in this particular little spot that I'm writing now? Bring it. Tell me. Give it to me. Present it somehow, some way. And there it was. I was watching the Oprah Winfrey Show, and there it came.
Alertness was awesome. Alertness is a great way of putting it. You were alert. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Alertness is the way, is the goal. For me, alertness is my goal, to be alert.
Yeah.
And not have the distraction of anything, just to be alert.
But I agree. And, excuse me, and alertness to me comes a lot easier when I set an intention. And when I say, like in my case, I told the universe, here's what I need, help me. And when you put that out, it's like you have to be alert, or otherwise you're going to miss it, because it could be so subtle that it could just go right in front of you and you didn't see it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So have you got another book in you? Is there another book to be channeled?
There is. I don't know yet when I'll find the time to to
You're
work
not
on them.
compelled
Yeah,
yet.
I'm having too much fun having people like yourself talking to stop.
And
You
you
know,
and you write articles. You write short pieces, which are great.
yeah, yeah, I do, and it's all part of my journey of trying to help others to get on board with it. So the way I see it is, part of our job is to polarize. According to Ra, you need to be polarized to 51% of positive polarity to be able to graduate, or 95% negative polarity to be able to graduate. So it's a lot easier to graduate under positive polarity than negative polarity. So therefore,
Go the positive route.
really. And so my mission is to try and get people to polarize and not just stay in what they call the sinkhole of indifference, where, oh, tomorrow, tomorrow, so you don't have this urgency to wake up, to do something, to move in your own learning. So that's why I write, which I would imagine that's similar reason for you to do this. Why are you doing this?
Oh, that's a tough question.
It can't be that tough.
Uh,
You're doing.
well, yeah, it's funny being on this side of having to answer questions, just because it doesn't happen, and it's quite the pressure, really, because you have to be eloquent and you have to be,
No,
it, you know,
but
uh,
okay, Randall. Let's do a little therapy session here.
okay.
Do you really have to, or is it
Well,
that you want to?
no, yeah, exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
so
My
do you hear the difference in your
Yeah,
head?
totally, and that's why there's two parts to me. Part of me doesn't give a damn. I just do what I do anyways. But part of me feels this pressure because for me, it's still quite a challenge to be even have anything of me public. It's a
Mm-hmm.
challenge for my ego still, and I'm working on it. And it's doing its thing. But yes, you're right. I don't have to be eloquent. I don't have to be anything. I can be the
There
goof.
you go.
I can be the goofball that I am, and the eloquent being that I am.
And you know what? That's probably what the universe wants you to do. To be the goofball that you are, if that's how you're seeing yourself. I don't see you as a goofball. I don't think that that's being, I mean, I think you're being genuine. But you have a label on yourself. I'm a goofball. So is that true, false, or don't know?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I'm a goofball because the goofball is what you just exposed. The goofball is the person that doubts and judges everything that I do, right? And then because it also feels embarrassed by being that person, it just embraces the goofball. But yeah. So what was the question? Let me answer
The
the question.
question is, why are you doing this?
Why am I doing it? Well, I'm doing it for all sorts of reasons, and probably many reasons that I'm not conscious of. For myself, it's a challenge. Like I was saying, I'm challenging myself,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, I'd like to combine everything that is of importance to me, which is sharing. So I will share my challenge, which is why I'm revealing myself here, revealing my goofballness and my self doubt and my eloquence. Um, and for myself, I want to experience um, new things. Um, and like I say, it's a combination of those things. I just want to share what I'm doing with whoever's interested, and whoever's not, that's fine too. So what am I doing? I don't know. I'm expanding my consciousness, and I feel, and intellectually, I believe that by expanding my consciousness, I'm expanding the universe's consciousness. So that's ultimately what I'm doing. I'm trying to expand.
And you're helping the one infinite creator to expand through you. And what?
Evidently, yes, I believe that is the case. Yeah, and that's cool. Yeah.
So tell me
Now,
where.
let me ask you that question.
What am I doing?
Yeah, why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I feel a sense of, and I don't want to say obligation. That doesn't ring, even though that's the word that's coming to my mind, that just doesn't ring true. But a sense of a sense of duty, a sense of well, for one, it's a great desire. I truly believe that I am one of what's known in the raw material as a wanderer. That someone who is come here to aid in the raising of consciousness and bringing forth light. And so, I'm just kind of falling in line with what my mission is, or my spiritual mission prior to coming here. I feel that I feel a calling to do the work necessary to bring people on board with doing their work, or doing their inner work. Come on, let's just not just sit for hours on end on Facebook and like. Let's just take a break from Facebook and like what's inside here. So that's kind of my, why I'm doing this, to try and help people recognize that there is more to life and more to embrace about themselves than they're even paying attention to. So, if anything, in a very succinct and consolidated way that I could say is, I want to help people to notice, to look inward, to assess, to explore, to seek. All those words that you can put on the tail end of that, just go and check out who you are. What are you all about, and how do you fit into the grander scheme of everything else? And not until you do that, would you have an understanding of what's really happening around you. Because it's such an elusive state of being. I mean, the things happening around you are only a reflection of that which you are. And if you don't understand what you are, you can't possibly recognize what's, the chaos that's around you is possibly what you're creating. So people get fixated on, I got a headache, or this happened to me, or that tragedy happened to me, and they get sort of, they fall in this whirlwind of reactivity, and when they don't consciously understand what it is that's happening or how they created it. So for me, it's about trying to educate or inspire. So.
And what about you personally? How does this expand you? Your experiences. You're doing this.
Well, it expands me. It requires for me to be definitely vulnerable, definitely on my A game, as far as personal exploration, and not that I am all the time. Kind of like you're calling yourself as a goofball, which obviously that's your terminology, and I certainly respect it. But it's about being your authentic self, however way that lands out, and connecting, being you can't be anything that you I'll take that back. You can be anything that you're not. There's plenty of evidence of that out there,
right?
But that's certainly not going to get you anywhere. And so for me, it's about reminding myself of what it is that I really am, so that I can be, so I can make a contribution, so that I can connect, so that I can have some sort of influence over someone else that might want to say, oh yeah, I kind of might like to, not that I want to be copied, but that's kind of something that I aspire to doing. So it's
being an example.
Being an example, perhaps. So that's what it for me. I see myself as being like a traffic. Do you remember the old timey cop in the corner with the whistle and the gloves directing
Right.
traffic? That away,
Right.
this way, stop, that away. So that's kind of how I see myself, someone who's on the bridge, as I've heard it be referred to, and just say, okay, it's this way. I've been there, and I do feel that I've been there, and I guess that's where. And I don't say it in a way that it's again egotistical, and it's like, oh, I've been there, No, I say it from a sense of I believe, because I have seen through many of my mystical experiences, that I've been there in other life experiences and other lifetimes. And so from that perspective is that I'm able to say, oh, I've been there. But don't take it from me, I'm saying it.
Right. Yeah.
I'm saying it because I feel it deep down in my heart that this is attainable, because I've been there. But yet, don't take it from me. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
It does.
If
Sure.
I'm translating
What is attainable then? What are you referring to as being attainable?
Attainable meaning unification with spirit. I mean, that's, after all, that's what we're working towards. Oneness, unification, enlightenment. I don't know. I don't think that there's a one word that can encapsulate the what that is. What is that? Or there isn't any one way to sum up that concept of. Did we lose? No, here we go. I thought there for a minute we got disconnected again. I don't think that there is a one word that can encapsulate, what it is that we're trying to attain, because it's very elusive. And that in and of itself is where the beauty is. It's elusive, but yet it's tangible on a sensorial level. It's to me it is anyway, and I guess that's why I keep working at wanting to become clear, so that I can express it through my own sense of beingness and my own sense of light, because you can't articulate it. So you don't have to, but the only way that I see it most possibly being expressed is by simply being. And I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It kind of contrasts with the traffic cop analogy, though,
Mm-hmm.
because the traffic cop analogy would point a direction, right? And I guess this is where I'm kind of at with myself. I've had to learn new levels of humility within myself, that I'm not sure what I can claim anymore. Do you know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I say that I want to influence people, I don't know that I do, because I don't know that I ever believe in influencing. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. This is my own process, because I'm doing similar to what you're doing. I'm presenting stuff out there, but I don't try to put an angle on it of telling them what's what. I just try to present a contrast of perspectives, or at least a perspective. I won't say there's a contrast, because I'm not in disagreement with the people that I'm discussing with publicly through these interviews. I'm more presenting, trying to draw out of them. And I guess, like you're saying, we all sort of learn from each other. I learned from hearing certain phrases that resonated with me, and all of a sudden I adopted that, and it shaped where I went from then on. And I guess that's what you mean, maybe, by being a traffic cop, is that you want to present concepts that maybe people have not understood, and that's why you wrote that for teenagers. You want to present it in a way that perhaps they'll understand in a way that they didn't before.
Exactly. Yeah. that really hits the nail on the head. Basically, by traffic cop, I don't mean, as in an authoritarian position, but just simply in terms of, oh, have you considered looking here? Or have you considered looking there? So, because information, I think, information is wonderful, but information can be very deceiving and create sometimes the greater delusions of grandeur than help. So, and not that I have personally the best information. I think information arrives to everyone as they need it, when they need it. But needless to say, I believe that I'm very blessed that I have been able to locate some very good information. So to me, it's about sharing the information that I have come about. Not that it is the gospel or the way, but just simply to share it. So I guess that would be a better way of expressing, what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's why it's a tough question for me.
Yeah,
because it brings up it brings up. Well, it's all good. All questions are good. I love questions. I love it because it's a challenge for me, because it makes me have to focus there and see what my real reality is. I know what I would like to say. I know what would sound the best. I know that would sound the most enlightened. But I would also like to express my truth, which is not nearly as perfect as that often, right?
But that's
it's good. That's my analysis. That's my public analysis of myself by exposing it.
Exactly.
And sharing it too.
Well, and your truth is your own way of being, unique and authentic. It's your truth.
Right.
And that's the only truth that matters in a way. I mean, your truth is your truth.
But it's the toughest to express for all of us, isn't it? I mean, because we're so inundated with from our birth, we're inundated with rules and expectations, and just releasing all those is the beginning of freedom. It's not what I mean. It's just the start of learning your own reality and being okay with it, or your own experience and being okay with it.
That was probably one of my greater lessons, was to let go of expectations. The day that I was able to recognize that not only did I have expectations of others, but I had expectations of myself, and that
came from others.
That came from myself and others. It was kind of like a feedback loop, My expectation of myself, which were very high, was being translated to expectations of others, which was even just as high. I was holding everybody else at the same standards that I was holding myself, and vice versa. So, but the day that I was able to say no more, and every now and then, of course, I still catch myself having expectations of others and myself and so forth. But when I recognize it and I let go, that's very freeing. That's very, very freeing.
But the layer of that onion of expectations goes very deep, and one thing I've noticed for myself, what we were talking about earlier, is having expectations of others can actually go as far as thinking they're doing the wrong thing by being unconscious. I've found this is something new to me that someone sort of exposed in myself, that my expectations go so subtle. To me, they were subtle, that I had judgments of people that weren't conscious, that I should help them to become conscious. It's not so much that I don't want to present this out there and add it to the mix, but with the expectation to go into there with the expectation that people need to become more conscious was also an expectation, a subtle one, of a deeper layer of that onion that I've had to unravel. And it's made me even freer, because it takes away some of the pain that I felt from feeling a bit of subtle responsibility for how everybody is. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I learned that the hard way. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So that onion of humility keeps peeling away new layers of expectations that are so sophisticated and so deep that it manifests itself through subtleties of our talk, whether it's the traffic cop, I mean, we're all, or myself with the goofball, right? We're all still trying to keep unraveling that part of ourselves that's in subtle and more subtle judgment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be free, right? Because like you say, what's more free than just being, right? I mean, it's, you know, I'll tell you if I can.
Yeah.
One of the most enlightening experiences that I ever had was when I passed out once, and not from drugs or anything or alcohol. I fainted. I fainted, and when I woke up, I was in the shower actually when I fainted, and I bumped my head, and I had a big bruise, and I was bleeding on my head. But I woke up giddy, and I was giggling because I'd never been that relaxed in my life. It took fainting for me to realize how uptight I am at all times. So when I woke up, even though I bumped my head and I was bleeding, I was giddy because my body had never felt that relaxed in my entire life. And it showed me something that I'd never seen before about myself, which was that somewhere in me I'm always tense, even when I think I'm not. There's more subtle aspects of myself that were so tense I didn't realize it till I was completely relaxed. Completely. I'd never been completely relaxed in my life until that moment. And that was one of those little moments for me that I'll never forget, and it's humbling.
Did you, when you bumped your head, did you have any kind of transcendent experience? In other words, did you remember? I mean, did you briefly transcend your state?
I passed out. I didn't even feel the bump because I was standing when I fainted,
Mm-hmm.
and then I must have hit myself. I only realized that after I woke up. The transcendental part was the afterwards for me. Maybe something happened during that time that I'm not conscious of yet.
Hang on a second, my power. I just realized. There we go. Plugging my computer. No, I was just.
Are you on a laptop?
Yeah, I'm plugged in. No, I was just thinking in terms whether it went into a full out of body experience. I mean, or if it was just so brief that you didn't feel yourself going out of body.
No, I've never had a. No, I've never had a out of body experience except for I do lucid dreaming. I can
Mm-hmm.
I've had that experience a
You
few times.
do?
Dream. Yeah, I practiced that, but I've never had that in my waking state where I've done something like that. But
Have you traveled anywhere in your lucid dreams that have been revealing to your conscious mind? In other words, have you been able to see any of your past lives or anything like that through your lucid dreaming?
no, you know what? I follow the path that Carlos Castaneda suggested through Don Juan, was that you don't try to manipulate it in any way. You just maintain the awareness and
Mm-hmm.
not in any way shape it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first woke up, the first time I ever woke up in my sleep, I was so excited I wanted to wake up and tell everybody, right? And then and as it went on, I remembered the reference points that they do, and then of course then I lost it. Right, you lose it very quickly unless you use a reference point. In this case, they suggested looking at your hands every once in a while. As soon as you feel it fading, that consciousness that's just as awake as now, but you're in a dream state, which is different than other dream states I've had where I could manipulate dreams and I was playing. This was something different. This was a piercing awareness of myself, but it fades very quickly unless I had a reference point. So I never tried to manipulate those dreams. So I didn't have any past life things or travel anywhere because I didn't intend to travel anywhere. I just was where I was and looked around and just tried to maintain it as long as I could without manipulation. Maybe there are stages where you can get to those points. I just have never explored those, and I don't. I've just gone by their recommendation on that, not to manipulate it, which feels right to me, not to manipulate, because I know that in that state I don't want to corrupt it.
On your lucid dreams, do you have any experiences of flying?
Well, one thing I realized was that I didn't have an experience of flying, but when I tried to walk, I would get my legs would get like lead. If I tried to walk, it would be like lead, and then I couldn't move at all. So I had to not think about walking at all and just think about movement. And then I didn't feel like flying or walking. It was just movement. And in the case of flying or height, I do recall that in dreams, if I was at a height when I woke up in my dream, I just would walk off the building. In other words, like in my normal dreams, I would feel fear of height. or anything like that. But I got to the point where height didn't mean anything to me anymore. So I never had a sense of flying or walking or anything. It's just that the spatial aspect of it didn't have the same meaning that it does in this awareness, if that makes sense. How about you? Do you have you had experiences with dreaming?
Dreaming a lot. I don't. I've not mastered lucid dreaming just yet, but I have a really. I have a really vivid sense of awareness of like various and dimensional sense when I dream. I mean, in other words, I can tell, like my regular dreams, everyday dreams, I don't remember them. Very seldom, I mean, do I remember them. I mean, DMT, you know, the moment that I wake up, it's like, 2 seconds I remember it, and then it's like it's gone.
Right.
But I do, it's interesting that I do remember reincarnative dreams. And they completely look different. The difference is on everyday dreams, they're very hazy. Like if I'm looking at you, there's like a blur in between. But reincarnational or past life dreams, they're very, very crystal clear. It's as if I'm actually there again. It's like I can see faces, I can see everything. So yeah, I have experienced those, and I also experience past lives on meditation. Various times where I've done deep meditations, and I've seen myself in various different places and circumstances, and like back in Egypt, I was an initiate in Egypt time. I've been also in Japan, in Mount Kumara. I was initiated there. So it's just been interesting how I've collaborated in various places that are known in history as
initiate cultures.
Hopi. I was in the Hopi culture also. What was interesting is that was my very first experience. And that actually came walking. I was walking. I did. I am not doing it very currently. I walk 3 miles every day. And through the time that I was writing my book, I was, very diligent about walking, because that helped a lot, flush out thoughts and what I'm going to write. And as I said that, anyway, so I was telling you about the first time that I had, a past life vision. I was walking, and I guess, when you're walking, you're kind of somewhat in a trance, because you're just like walking and I also walk with music. I wear, headphones, and I walk with very meditative music. Believe it or not, I don't walk with very, hardcore.
No Zeppelin.
No, Led Zeppelin. I walk to almost get inside my head as I'm walking. And so there's this one song. It was incredible. I remember exactly the song. It was a song, "Rhythm of the Tide." I think it's the name of the title, by Gandalf. Is the name of the group. Really interesting song. And every time I play that song, it does the same thing to me. It's almost as if I can see in my periphery some other dimension. I can just see it. And when you're walking, it's interesting, because when you're walking, you're moving forward, but when you're seeing on your periphery, it's almost as if there's a ripple effect on both sides that is opening up. It's a weird trippy sensation. At least it was for me. And that was the first time where I had this reincarnation. I had the sense that I was on top of this horse. I can even describe the color of the horse. It's like this caramel color horse with a blondish mane. And I was on top of this horse riding across like a wheat field or a grass field or, a meadow type of field with mountains in the background. And, and and I looked into, something in my neck and pulled it this way, and it was a Hopi sign, like one of the Hopi symbols. So, and so that was my first, and it was just a small snippet, but I could tell that I had been there in that particular time space.
Right. Yeah, you've had a lot of you have a real sense of having a history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah. So, and then other times I've been, the second time that I had one, I was also through a meditation. I had a sense that it was interesting because on this particular time I was riding a white horse. And I'm facing, do you know the movie Avatar, how the tree, the weeping willow, the tree of wisdom, and in my vision, it was a very similar tree, but it had blossoms, pink blossoms, very similar to the cherry tree like you see in Washington State or Washington, D.C. So it was this beautiful tree, but this tree could talk. I mean, or, obviously it didn't have a mouth or anything like that, but you could hear wisdom or telepathically something being said. And so I'm riding across the tree in this horse as if I'm trying to jump from one world into another. And suddenly I hear a voice say, "Anahili, stop, you're not ready." And in that moment, it's as if I bounce up against a glass door, like you're walking outside
Right.
on a sliding door, and suddenly you realize, boom, and the horse, falls over, and I fall over. And it was really interesting because what I found later, more recently, I went into the library of the Robert Monroe. Are you familiar with the Monroe Institute?
Right. Yeah, Tom Campbell is affiliated with it.
Okay, well, so is anyway, I've heard the Monroe Institute before, but Foster talks about the Monroe Institute on his movie. So I went into the Monroe Institute, and there's a recording there by one of their people who is talking and channeling the conference or the Confederation of Love or the Council of Love. And in the Council of Love, no other than the author is speaking. And one of the questions is, what is your world? What is your the planet look like? And they're saying that the planet looks like a bubble, what would appear to us to be as a bubble of glass. And to me, that was like, wow. What I
Right.
experienced was, and that's again why I believe that I'm a wanderer, and what I experienced is possibly from just a whole different universe. And my belief is that the reason why we have those pink trees that are like, cherry blossoms, and I particularly see them later on expressed in the Tom Kenyon work, where in Mount Kumara, Sanat Kumara, I think the words sound the same, but they're spelled different. Mount Kamara in Japan, Kamara, I believe, has all those pink trees up in the mountainside. Where you see, if you Google Japan, Mount Kamara, and you see pictures of snow and and in those trees. I believe that they were brought here from another civilization, from another planet. That's my belief. I may be completely wrong. Because that's exactly how I see them in my vision on this particular planet where I'm writing. And what was interesting, Randall, is that when I fell on the floor with the horse and I do like this with my hand, there, because there's snow on the ground, and beneath the snow is glass. So that's why that's how I didn't say that part before. I mean, I think I'm kind of jumping ahead from the vision to what I heard later to back to the vision, and it doesn't have. It doesn't have a whole lot of a coherent thread there, but I guess it's my own excitement on how.
Well, for you, it resonated. It all came together for you.
It all came together when I heard. Okay, when I saw what I saw in my vision, then I heard what I heard, and then I read. What I read about the landing of Sanat Kumara, who is an Arturian. We know Sanat Kumara as an ascended master, but in the work that Tom Kenyon, channeled, they're saying. By the way, Christ is coming, and the Magdalene is coming through, also saying that they are Arturians. But that work had an impact on me because they're talking about how they first landed something like 26,000 years ago in Japan. That was their first landing. And all these pieces, it's like pieces of a puzzle, and connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that I went on a tangent on that, what was
okay.
Let's refocus.
I think we're losing it. I think it's. I'm losing a bit of my energy.
I am too, and I guess we're just a little TMI. So that's why I think there's going to be some heavy duty editing. It's been a combination of just chatting and interviewing and just getting to know each other. So there's definitely going to be some heavy editing in here. I don't know. Anyway,
it's your call. You're.
Yeah, we've already. I think we had. It's already 10:46 my time in
it's almost 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention that I don't want to come across. I'm not that concerned, but I don't want to come across as who does this woman think she is either.
What do you mean? Why would you think that?
Well,
I mean, from people watching this or from me?
No. From people watching this.
I think I would like it to be a back and forth thing.
I'm talking about what the information that I just gave in terms of reincarnation. I'm not out of the closet on that one yet. You know what I mean? In terms of I'm still a little bit guarded about that information.
You're not comfortable sharing that?
It's not so much that I'm not comfortable. I'm comfortable sharing it, but I'm kind of concerned of how people perceive it. I don't know what to make of it.
Those damned expectations again, hey?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. We're still freeing ourselves.
Exactly. I just. But go ahead.
There's actual. I think it's actually prudent, although I don't use that word ever. That it's not necessary that everything be revealed at all times. Sometimes you dissipate energy by spilling it.
Exactly.
And so I understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? Some things just are better left elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not secretive. It's not anything else. It's just energetic.
Well, it loses the purpose. I think it's what you're saying. Yeah, and I agree, because it's like if this is your mission, your mission is to inspire and so forth, and to be an example. Well, an example is not necessarily established by saying, well, yeah, I'm from another planet.
A lot of people say that they're from other planets. How do you look at them?
I don't have any problem with it, but again,
exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, so what are we going to sing to close this up?
Oh, I don't sing. I was just a musician.
Now
guitar player.
the words are, what is it? How I'm going to feel when I was hoping to memorize it, but I didn't get to memorize it
What's
from
that?
your song. Oh
Which?
world, your song. Oh world says, I'm gonna feel when I something in the wave.
Oh, there's a whole bunch. Oh, you mean the one that Nassim sang? The
Yeah,
line that he sang. What did he sing? You're
something in
gonna
the.
get the feeling how
You're
the
gonna.
moving waves will carry you through.
Yeah,
That's right.
that was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. I don't even know the right key.
So what's in store for you next? Let's close it up with that. What do you see yourself doing next? Who are you interviewing? How do you?
Well, I'm actually very excited because I'm going to be interviewing someone from Clear Green
Clear green.
next
What
week.
is that?
Clear Green is Carlos Castaneda's public. What's the right word? He created a company. Well, he's part of. He found a way of presenting tensegrity. You know what tensegrity is?
No.
Oh, tensegrity is a series of movements that Don Juan taught him, and he taught to some other people, and they're spreading it to people. They're sharing it with the world. So he called it tensegrity, which is a Buckminster Fuller term. And anyways, the group that goes around teaching this is called Clear Green. And so the people at Clear Green, the woman that I'm going to speak with, was directly taught from Carlos. And so I'd be curious to know what of his philosophy she shares and how she sees the world. I'm curious how somebody that was directly linked with Carlos Castaneda, I'm curious about that person. So I'm looking forward to talking to her very much. So that's what's going on next week. And I'm kind of winding down the interview thing. I'm going to start getting into something new. And my brother, who actually wrote the lyrics to "Oh World," he's had his own, I don't even know how you call it, downloads from the Taurus since he was very young, and he's on the verge of writing. He's on the verge of sharing his knowledge. So I'm going to be doing something with him very soon.
Neat.
He's very much into sacred geometry. Well, I wouldn't call it sacred geometry. Geometry. How geometry and numbers relate to the Taurus and what's going on. He's got his own.
So numerology and sacred geometry merged
Not just
into.
numerology. It's actually the shapes that actually for him tells how. I couldn't even explain it. I hate even doing that. Trying to tell somebody else's
version. Yeah.
Exactly, because I can never ever do it justice.
We just have to wait and see.
Exactly. It's always a pitiful, representation of what somebody else who's actually coming from that place, how they would present it. And anything I could say would be very demeaning, I'm sure. So I hate to even say it. But I'm going to be working with my brother on something very soon. And I want to do a documentary soon.
Cool.
And I'm not sure. Once I open myself up, like you were saying before with what you did with your book, I'll open myself up and something will lead me to the next.
Oh, and that's so much fun when you do that. But do you know what your documentary is going to be? I mean, do you have a sense of what theme or what path you're heading with that?
It's no. I do, but I don't. In other words, it's going to be everything that I've been everything that's led me to this point in my life, basically. I'll try to encapsulate it in some form that would be of interest as a representation of the archetype that is me, right? And everything that I've funneled through my understanding through talking to all these people and whatever experiences I've had. Like any filmmaker, it can only be a representation of the person making the film to some degree, even if you're having everybody else be the actors in it. So it'll be whatever the confluence of all my influences have been. And I'll wait, like you say, with that book, I'm not putting myself in that space yet. I want to finish up the interviews. And then I'll put myself into that space and the form will come. The structure will come. It always
I can
has,
tell you're going to be up to something really special, because I can tell from personal experience when you put yourself to that space and you say, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm ready to leap and lead me. It's the most
right. Exactly.
It is. Let me tell you, there's a lot of energy there, and that in and of itself has its own vortices to it.
Exactly.
And it's like, what's so thrilling about it, it's like going into a roller coaster. You're holding on to your life and going, yippee!
Right.
So I just hold on, because very exciting. I wish you the best.
I have complete faith in it, and I'm not looking forward to it because I try not to look forward, but I have complete faith that that there's something just around the corner that'll take me in a direction that'll be that'll consume me. That'll be fun. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I can't wait. I can't wait to see. We'll need to do a take 2 of this and check back with you on those 2 projects, because it sounds like they're 2 separate projects. The one with your brother, and then the one with your documentary.
So far, who knows? Maybe they'll be the same one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I say, I don't know, and I don't want to know yet. I just want to finish what I've started, and then it'll reveal itself. I don't think too far ahead, really.
Very cool. So what do you want to close up with, since this was supposed to be your interview and I ended up doing a lot of the talking about?
I didn't want it to be just a one-way thing. I wanted it to be a conversation. I enjoy conversations more than interviews.
I do too, and I appreciate that you've made room for both of us, and it's been really delightful. But what is it that you, out of what you do, which you've defined in a very loose way, what is it that you want to say to those out there? What is the one thought that you want to leave to those to think about?
Oh, geez, I would never want to leave a thought for people to think about. I always ask that of somebody else too. I always ask, my last question of most people is always, if you could make a public service announcement to the world, what would you say? But I would never answer that.
So why do you ask it if you'll never answer it?
Because everybody else answers it, and it's awesome. I love it that people answer it. But for myself, that's not where I feel that my I don't feel compelled to answer that particular question. How about you? Let me ask you that question. Because you definitely have a sense in that direction. So I'm going to ask you, if you could make a public service announcement to humanity, in a nice encapsulated form, what would you say? What is the gist of what you would try to say to people?
Get on with it. It's one word. Get on with it. Get off of the bleachers, because that's really where most of the people sit. They sit looking and observing everybody else as if there is a game to be watched. The football game, the baseball game, the this game, the that game, and they're watching. They're just spectators in this game of life, and that's not the case. That's not how it rolls. That's not how we're supposed to roll. We're supposed to all be playing the big cosmic game in the big game board. And so it's like, get on with it. Just get on with it. Very simple.
Awesome. And that's how I would end my interview. Thank you very much. It has been awesome talking.
It has been delightful. I hope that we'll see you on the next time.
Talk soon.
Keep in touch, all right?